Welcome to Hungry Dads, your guided tour through the delicate and often overwhelming balancing act between food indulgences and social acceptance. And now, as always, here are your hosts, Rod Budget and Hugh Gallen.
Hello and welcome to episode 20 of Hungry Dads. I'm Rod Budget.
I'm Hugh Gallen.
And tonight we have a little bit of a special situation for our big 20th episode. For those of you who didn't hear in episode 19, there was some erroneous information given out. A mistake is made. This happens. So he was going to jump in and talk a little bit about it and explain what happened.
In the world of reporting, as we do here on Hungry Dads, we give out a lot of information, and we value that information, and we hold ourselves to a very high standard for the accuracy of this information. However, last week, when reporting on cereals and cereal nutrition facts, I made a report that frankly was just inaccurate. And as soon as it was realized, we quickly went back to the episode for a post-production note, and I'll just get started by playing that right now. Hello, this is Hugh Gallen, and I'm interrupting episode 19 for a post-production editor's correction and apology. I shared some grossly inaccurate carb information about Raisin Brand at this point in the episode. We at Hungry Dads would never intentionally mislead our audience, so I must clarify at this point that Raisin Brand has 46 grams of carbs, not 5. As you'll hear, this bad information affected Rod's decision-making process. To hear my formal apology, how this mistake was made, and Rod's views on the true carb information, please check out episode 20 of Hungry Dads. Now, on with the show. Alright, so no need to repeat it. You heard the mistake that was made. It was about the carb information for Raisin Bran. And if you haven't listened to the episode, you should, because it'll quickly become apparent that this was an important piece of information for Rod in making his decision. This is what I'd like to say about it. The venerable This American Life podcast did a expose on the Apple iPod factories in China, and it was revealed that their sources were completely inaccurate, and they did an entire review, an episode, investigating their investigation and the mistakes that they made. They came clean. I found it to be both respectable and interesting, so that's what we're here to do first today. It's very simple. I went online, I got my sources. I will not reveal the source. It would be irresponsible of me, but frankly, it was just wrong. I used some information that was inaccurate. I trusted it. I did actually check fat and calories for many or most of the cereals we were using. I didn't count on carbs becoming a major factor. I did not fact check them. I did not double check them. So when they were asked for, I probably should have just been honest and said, I have them, but they haven't been confirmed. I didn't do that. I relied on faulty information. That's all I can say, other than the fact that I take full responsibility and apologize to our listeners. And I apologize to you, Rod. You trusted me as you were making this very important decision. I leave it to you now to update the audience on this matter.
Yeah, few things. First of all, I think a lot of the more amateurish podcasts out there would try to sweep this under the rug. They would not come clean. They would not be honest like we're doing. This is how we operate. I think we want to be true to our loyal listeners at all times. Secondly, don't beat yourself up. This is just as much my fault as yours. I should have known better than to think Raisin Bran really had 5 carbs. And taking a step back and thinking about it, I know that it has way more than 5 carbs. Bran has carbs. I was carb obsessed. That kind of threw you for a loop. The only thing that I can say for myself is during that Sweet 16 bracket show, I was in such a zone that any outside kind of thoughts were not getting into my head, other than, just looking straight ahead, and everything was kind of in slow motion, trying to make each decision, that I think maybe even subconsciously I wanted the 5 carbs to be true, because that I latched onto that and kind of used that throughout the show. So I'm to fault as well. I didn't kind of slow down and say, that doesn't sound right. I used it to my subconscious advantage. So with that being said as background, here's a quick recap of episode 19 and what was presented to me by Hugh. He gave me 16 breakfast cereals, and I basically had to whittle it down in tournament format to the one cereal I would eat for the rest of my life. And that cereal in episode 19 that I chose was Raisin Bran, based largely on the fact that I was able to use 2 lifelines to obtain nutritional information. I used one on Raisin Bran, and he told me that it had 5 carbs, which I should have known was way off, but I latched onto it and ended up going with that information and picking Raisin Bran as a cereal that I would eat for the rest of my life. Now that this information has come to light, I've had access to all the nutritional information, I've analyzed it, and I still think this is an interesting exercise. So based on having all the nutritional information, I have some additional thoughts, and I have changed my decision. I will come out and say it. So first of all, I'm going to want some sweetness in my cereal. I may have said that in episode 19, but I don't know if I came out and said it blatantly. I like Cheerios, I like Corn Chex, but if I'm going to eat this for the rest of my life, I need some sweetness. So the non-sweetened cereals are eliminated right off the bat. Secondly, I'm going to eliminate the two, what I'm going to call sham health cereals that we discussed in episode 19. That being Cracklin' Oat Bran and Kashi Go Lean Crunch. I won't rehash everything, but if you haven't heard the episode, these market themselves as health cereals, and they are not healthy at all. They're, in fact, the two least healthy cereals out of the 16. So after that, I looked at what was left, and the nutritional differences of the remaining cereals are kind of marginal. They all kind of fall in the same category of 120 to 180 calories per serving, and no grams of fat to 3 grams of fat, and the same amount of carbs. So with that being said, I don't think it's a surprise to people who listened to episode 19, but I'm just going with my favorite tasting cereal now, being Peanut Butter Captain Crunch, if he'll take me back.
Peanut Butter Crunch is a yummy part of a complete breakfast.
The Captain seems fickle. I know I probably broke some hearts last week, but I would like Captain Crunch to take me back. Peanut butter is a protein. It's practically a vegetable. The health isn't that bad. I'm going with Peanut Butter Captain Crunch.
Well, thank you, Rod, first of all, for kind of absolving me of my sin, which I won't beat myself up, but I do hold myself responsible, and I think it's good, perhaps, that this happened for a few reasons. Number one, it's going to force me, and I hope you, to check our facts from now on. We do not want to mislead our listeners. We want to be credible. We consider ourselves experts, and this is the kind of thing that we need to be reminded of as we're laying out the information. The other reason it's kind of good, and not to infer that this was either intentional or a good thing to have happen, but what it forced you to do now was take a look at your choices and your lifetime cereal choice. You stripped away the theatrics of the game that I created and made a decision based on all the real facts and all the facts available to you, all the nutritional information. And it seems to me that once you were able to see that in front of you, you pretty quickly made the decision that you're going to go for the sweet side of cereals. And it's interesting that I think it's a surprisingly small margin between the health cereals and the quote-unquote sugar not health cereals. Once you look at all the factors, the sweetness benefit outweighs the health detriment, because even the healthier, less flavorful ones still had a surprising amount of sugar and calories and carbs. So you might as well have the sugar on there. The cost-benefit analysis basically just shook out, where I'm not surprised you end up with the sweet. So again, this situation caused you to take another look back with a different lens and come to a different conclusion, and probably a more accurate conclusion. If you were actually tasked to choose your lifetime cereal, you would base it on all available information, and that's exactly what you did. So good methodology, solid decision. Wouldn't be my choice. I think peanut butter as a flavor is pretty niche. I don't think it's broad enough to satisfy me for the rest of my life. I'd probably go with I would go for the sweet potentially, but I'd go for something a little more mainstream sweet, like a Frosted Flakes, which I actually thought might be your pick because you spoke very highly of Tony the Tiger, and Frosted Flakes had a pretty good sweetness for the health ratio.
I considered Frosted Flakes, Cinnamon Toast Crunch, and Peanut Butter Captain Crunch as my final three. I'm just, unlike you, I'm a huge fan of peanut butter flavoring, even in a cereal. Some people think it's strange. I don't blame them for that. But a good point you brought up that is interesting is that now that I have all the information in front of me, I know that there's not a huge difference between the nutritional values. But I was thinking, even if I didn't get the nutritional value of Raisin Bran in episode 19, I may have still ended up going with Raisin Bran under the premise that I thought it would be healthier, and it does have a little bit of sweetness. But now that I see the information, it's not at all healthier.
The peanut butter crunch bird laid another egg, Captain.
A magical egg filled with my peanut butter crunch cereal.
Hungry Dads! So exciting news coming out this week in that the Lay's Do Us a Flavor 2015 contest is open. This is something that we kind of got in the tail end of the 2014 contest when the podcast started, and now we're able to kind of get ahead of and give our thoughts on and give our own flavors. I think it's wise, obviously, with a contest like this or any contest, to start with the rules and kind of going over criteria, the judging strategies, and let's just jump in and do that now. I want to start by saying the 2014 Do Us a Flavor contest had a reported 3.8 million entries, so there's definitely some stiff competition out there. I think there's going to be a lot of strategy and a lot of luck to go into it. But I give that figure mainly because the rules are somewhat insightful and specific, I think. And it's one of those things where, with a contest this big, I think you have a pretty big advantage just by reading the rules pretty carefully and the criteria, where if people just kind of start throwing things out there, I think you can eliminate 60 to 70% of the entrants just by not following the rules or not kind of catering to what they're looking for. So let's jump in with the rules, and I won't go over all the rules, but I'll highlight some of the things that I found interesting or thought were ripe for discussion. First of all, you have to submit your entries between January 20th and March 30th. And I don't know how interesting this is, but the thought occurred to me, is sooner better? Is later better? Does it matter at all? I think, I have an advertising background which involves quote unquote pitching for new business, and the agencies pitching the clients always wanted to be the last one to go because you get the last word, you get the last impression, you're fresh in the mind. But with a contest this large, I don't know. Does it really matter if you submit on March 28th, 29th, 30th? What do you think, Hugh? Does it make a difference?
I haven't tested the website and the submission process yet. One question I want to know, and I can just experience it, is if you submit the exact flavor or even a similar flavor, if it in fact will advise you that this has already been submitted and perhaps bar you from doing it. I imagine it's a text review, meaning it'd have to be word for word the same. But if that function exists, which my research didn't reveal any, then it would obviously make a difference. Or if in the event of a tie, the first one comes in, which that's not in the rules, as stated. So my impression was actually earlier's better, just to get yourself in there. But because the review process, who knows if they're, like you said, it's going to be by committee. It's probably done by a large group. I don't think it's like an advertising pitch. The theory is right, but I think in practice for something this large, it's not going to apply.
So next up is probably the most important part of the rules, and this is the criteria by which the entries will be judged. 40% weight will be given to original and creative flavors, which I think is pretty straightforward and not surprising. 30% of the weight is given to the potential for a delicious flavor. And this is one that's, I think, very opinion-based, but it's a judging contest, so what are you going to do? And then finally, the last 30% is a simple, straightforward, and fun flavor consistent with the taste of America. So I found this interesting in that it's somewhat contradictory to criteria number 1 in being original and creative. It's not completely contradictory in that I think if you can come up with something simple and straightforward, yet still very creative, that will win points. Another thought I just kind of had was that regional flavors seem to have done well in the past, maybe. So with the Taste of America, I think you might have an advantage if you can come up with something that's either a piece of Americana or a regional kind of specialty.
Yeah, I think you mentioned it's contradictory, and I think that's a valid point. When trying to create some submissions, which I know we've done, and we'll talk about that, it drives you in two separate directions. Because on one hand, you want to be original and creative. On the other hand, you've got this restriction to fit it into a Taste of America theme. And knowing that that's 30% of the judging, you certainly can't or don't want to ignore it. It potentially eliminates some ideas if you can't shoehorn it into the Taste of America theme. On the other hand, that requirement, I think, has created some creativity in the way I've crafted some of my ideas. So in the end, I think it's a good criteria. I think it might separate the men from the boys, which is going to be necessary. It gives me some faith in the judging process. It's obviously transparent that they gave it right there in the rules. And I'm not sure, but I don't recall this Taste of America theme existing for the prior contests. I think this is a new component that is not surprising, maybe, like you said, because those flavors were successful, they latched onto it, or they're trying to do something different, or some market testing showed that patriotism is in for 2015, so they're going to roll with it. In any case, I think it's fine. I think it helped create some structure, and I was willing to work within it.
The next aspect I wanted to address is that you can submit up to 3 ingredients for your chip flavor, although you're not required to. And this seemed a little, I don't know, strange, or I didn't know how to feel about this. Should you submit 3 ingredients? It seems a little weird. I mean, obviously, salt's going to be an ingredient in almost anything. There's preservatives in chips. Are you going to submit preservatives? I guess what they're trying to get at is it's a specific recipe that maybe you're trying to transform into a chip. You can give them some guidance with 3 ingredients. But oftentimes, I think the 3 main ingredients are flavors that are going to be in the name, or at least 2 of them. So I found this one interesting. What do you think, Hugh?
In addition to 3 ingredients, your submissions include a flavor name, 200-character description of the inspiration, the city and state of inspiration, the chip style, and I think those things might be more important than the flavor itself. And that's why I wonder if they will take multiple submissions on the same flavor, the exact same flavor, maybe even with the exact same name, because in those 200 characters, if you can sell yourself better, if you can explain your inspiration better, then maybe you're the winner. And so I'd like to think that maybe those 200 characters are where the winners are really going to come from. It seems like a tough one to judge, and that seems like where they're going to be able to pick their winners from. Another thing I wanted to mention, which seems relevant now, is that the rules say that Frito-Lay can alter or change the winning entry in whole or in part anytime at its sole discretion. So I didn't know if that meant they look at my submission, they think it's good, but they're going to tweak it for sales, but I still get the credit, or if it means after I submit something, they tweak it and it's theirs and my name never gets mentioned. It doesn't really matter. It's their game and it's their rules. But I did take it to mean that if they take my idea and tweak it, I'm a finalist.
I found that interesting as well. I have a few notes. I thought it was funny. I think it's legalese. I think it's, if somebody submits a flavor and it's somewhat similar to a flavor they come out with down the line, they don't want to get sued. But yeah, I thought it was funny wording. Like, can they turn my garlic bread creation into a steak? Like,
but I do like to think that maybe if they like aspects of my idea, but it's not quite there, that they would then improve it to fit their needs and then give me the credit for it. I have a feeling that might happen.
I don't know. I think you're living in a dream world there.
I'm very optimistic about my choices. You'll hear my excitement. I am foolish enough to think I got a shot. I don't know why.
No, I think it takes extreme confidence. I think I have a shot too. I think it'll be amazing when we both end up as finalists. Just 2 more points on the rules that I found actually humorous. These aren't necessarily important. I just found them funny before we reveal our initial thought ideas for the Lay's Do Us a Flavor 2015 contest. There is a bullet point that says, entries will be judged by a qualified panel of judges selected by Frito-Lay. First of all, why have we not been contacted by Frito-Lay? I think we are overly qualified, if anything. Secondly, I'd be interested to know what exactly qualifies you as a judge of a potato chip eating contest, because I want that to be my job.
I saw that as well, and I frankly quickly went to a marketing person, a Frito-Lay chef, and the CEO. I think it's going to be those 3 people. That's my guess.
Yeah, I think it's probably going to be something like that. There'll be somebody, maybe even a food flavor technologist as well, a chemist of some sort. And the last thing I just kind of thought was funny was there's a line that says, entries cannot defame, misrepresent, or contain disparaging remarks about Frito-Lay, its products, or associates. I just found the wording cannot very funny. It's the only time it's used in there. You cannot do it. I can do it. It's just not going to be judged. It's going to be thrown out. What, are they going to arrest me? Don't tell me I cannot defame you if I want to defame you.
Hungry Dads.
I'm really excited about this topic, and I'm glad we're back to this. Frito-Lay and potato chips, the Frito-Lay Do Us a Flavor contest, was the topic of our very first episode of this podcast, and we've revisited it many times, I think more times than we've revisited any other topic. So this really is our first chance to come full circle with the contest from the beginning. As we said, we want to make our own submissions.
Hugh and Rod's 2015 Lay's Do Us a Flavor Ideas.
And I want to start off actually just with, I think, potentially my very best one. And before I do that, as I wrote them, I broke down into some categories that we've discussed before. If you remember from prior contests, there were flavors like cheddar bacon mac, and we said that was kind of just a tried and true flavor, not too inspired, but probably solid and able to sell. We predicted it as the winner. Turns out we were wrong. On the other end of the spectrum, there were things like chicken and waffles or cappuccino, which were kind of the gimmick and buzzworthy type of flavors, but ultimately didn't seem like they were actually going to become true potato chip flavors that would be lasting. But they certainly would get headlines. And then there were some that were kind of in the middle, the wasabi, ginger, which were good flavor combinations, solid, but neither boring nor crazy. I took my choices and I've categorized them as such because I do think the judges are going to be looking to fill those niches. I think they're going to want some flavors that are just instantly recognizable, comfortable, and able to sell. And then they're going to want a flavor or two that are going to make some headlines, like your cappuccinos. So I'm going to start off with my gimmick and buzzworthy flavor, which I also happen to think might fit the delicious and sellable category. I'll also share before I give you the title of the flavor. I love marketing copy. I take every opportunity I get to read it on the air, and I wrote some marketing copy for my flavors, and I am going to share them.
Flavor submission number 1.
Deep fried salted caramel bacon. I tried to hit every buzzword I could for delicious sounding, trendy things, and this is how one might sell deep fried salted caramel bacon. Remembering now, we have to tap into a regional mentality, a taste of America, and its inspiration. And this one, I lose points on this one because it's not instantly recognizable, but I'd like to think I tied it in well. At the Texas State Fair, they'll deep fry almost anything, but one might even be too big for Texas. Thick cut bacon dipped in golden salty caramel, all deep fried in thick and crunchy batter. Lasso up your bag today.
Lasso up your bag. That's gold.
Now, the thing I didn't do, I have not checked these to make sure they're under 200 characters, but these will be my submissions for my inspiration.
Wow, I think that is a strong flavor. The deep fried struck me as a little over the top. The salted caramel bacon sounds a little classier, but I don't know. The deep fried, I know they can do almost anything with flavor. I like it. I think it's solid.
Top that, Rod.
Rod, flavor submission number 1.
Okay, when I reveal my flavors, I did not write marketing copy yet, but I do have thoughts on them and kind of their strengths and potential weaknesses and how it fits into the overall rules that we just went over. So without further ado, my first flavor is Frito Chili Pie. And I think this is good for Taste of America. It's a regional thing. It's Southern. It's Texas. Fritos is obviously a Lay's brand, so it should be okay there. The thing that concerns me most is it's confusing. I don't mean use actual Fritos as the chip, obviously. I want chips that are flavored like Fritos, like corn chips, along, of course, with chili and cheddar cheese. And I think this is going to be a kettle chip setting. It might be confusing, but I think otherwise this is a pretty strong entry. I would consider this a solid flavor category.
Yeah, I think that tapping into another Lay's brand might actually be very attractive to them right off the bat. I can see how it could start to be confusing, but that could also go into the gimmick category because you're cramming a corn chip into a potato chip, and you are going with the regional locality. It's familiar. It's comfort food. My main thought on it is that it might not win a lot of points in the original and creative category. Chili cheese, it's a flavor that's been done. It's probably already been submitted in a lot of different ways. You've delineated yourself with the Frito angle, so it certainly seems like a solid contender. I think the strength of that one is the Frito pie aspect of it.
Yeah, I don't think it's a super outlandish flavor. It's a little bit conservative in the beginning here, but I think it's solid.
Hugh's flavor number 2.
Now I'll move into a different category, whereas last time I did something that was a little crazy. This one's a little more solid and arguably uninspired. I call it Toasted Sourdough Roast Beef Sandwich. To describe it, I would say, San Francisco knows sourdough. Denver knows beef. Put them together, add a cup of au jus, and you've got a hearty American classic dripping with flavor. Face it, ever since you were a kid, you've gotten a thrill from putting a few potato chips inside your sandwich. Well now, how about putting your sandwich inside of a chip?
You should be a copywriter. You really should. This is well thought out. I don't think that's that straightforward. I mean, sourdough is kind of straightforward, but once you start putting it in au jus and sandwiches and beef, I don't know. It's a little over the top flavor-wise, I think. I don't think it's bad over the top. I just mean I wouldn't consider it straightforward.
I intentionally, and you'll see this over and over, I intentionally am putting a lot of words in my flavor title. And I don't know if there's a limit, and maybe I'll get in trouble there. But I think it's important to delineate myself. I'm guessing a dozen or more people have already tried roast beef. So you gotta do something more. Someone might have even come up with sourdough roast beef. But toasted sourdough roast beef sandwich, I'd like to think that if there's some sort of text comparison, that I can set myself apart.
Yeah, that's not a bad strategy, actually, especially if they're using robots and computer programs to kind of eliminate the repeats. But I think that's solid. I think it's a tasty sounding sandwich, so I think it would translate nicely to a chip.
I desperately hope that they read the copy carefully and that I can fit all of my ideas into 200 characters.
Rod's flavor number 2.
This is perhaps a gimmick, although I don't think it's terribly outlandish or necessarily hasn't been thought of before. But in chip format, I think it's a little bit unique. And that is glazed donut. I think this resonates with everyone. You don't need to explain it a lot. It's going to need a decent amount of sugar or sugar taste, which I think turned some people off in potato chips, but not me. The cappuccino chips last time were very sweet and I liked it. I think it would be delicious. Everyone loves donuts. I'm not going to overthink this one. I think this would go with an original style chip. I don't think the kettle kind of crunch would go well with the glazed donut flavor. So it's pretty straightforward, but I found it interesting.
Yeah, the minute you said it, I said, yes, of course. I hadn't thought of it, and I thought long and hard. So I think it's going to hit some points on originality. I think it's going to fit into their category of the buzzworthy one. I think on the deliciousness scale, I think it's an even better submission than the first one. Very solid. I think it's the kind of thing that you could see them selling. And again, it would be the buzzworthy type. Glazed donut. Yeah, I'm in.
Flavor submission number 3.
Okay, so I had another category that I haven't talked about, and I called it creative but fringe. And I think it's going to lack mass appeal. In this category, I had the idea of sausage jambalaya. I think jambalaya might be something that people think of. I put the word sausage in front of it just to, again, delineate it from a text standpoint, from a flavor standpoint. Jambalaya, I think, is a well-known thing. It's definitely got a strong regional association with New Orleans, so I think there's points there. Not sure if it's going to come off as original. I think it's got good potential for deliciousness. And here's how I would sell it. No need to fire up the stove. Fire up the jazz band instead and crunch into New Orleans' favorite dish. Hearty sausage jambalaya with just the right amount of spice will bring you back home to the bayou.
I'm sold on all of these after hearing the copy, honestly. Yeah, I think that's a solid flavor. It seems like sausage has been done a lot, so my thought might be, I know you like to pack more in, but just jambalaya might be interesting. Just because sausage, it seems like, they've done it a few times. But jambalaya, I mean, if you could do that in a chip, just think of the flavor explosion.
I might be overthinking it here, but another reason I made it sausage jambalaya was because normal jambalaya has shrimp and shellfish in it. I happen to be allergic to those things. In my mind, a lot of people are, and so you might eliminate a big segment of the chip eating audience by making it a seafood flavor. That's another reason I specified sausage as opposed to regular jambalaya.
Rod, flavor selection number 3.
Next up for me is a flavor that was inspired by Mr. Hugh Gallen in episode 15 of Food Fusion Mashups. And this flavor is barbecue chicken pizza. This one I'm a little torn on. I might not be creative enough. Everybody's going to think of pizza, but I was racking my brain for a pizza flavor that's unique and accessible. And barbecue chicken pizza is kind of a Midwestern thing, as Hugh alluded to in episode 15, or at least started that way. So it kind of goes in with the flavors of America. I don't know. I was a little bit torn on this one because I thought everybody's going to try to come up with a pizza, but I don't know. Barbecue and chicken and pizza, those are three pretty distinct flavors, I feel like.
I think you're, like, as you already said, you're weak on the association with the taste of America. You can try to call it Midwest, but the submission actually calls for a city and a state. So you're going to have to apply it to something, and you're pretty much going to be just fishing for a Midwest city and state, and it's going to be obvious that you're reaching. I think barbecue, right off the bat, is already such a ubiquitous chip flavor. They're not going to be able to look past that, and I don't think they're going to see it as creative. So I think if they can get to the rest of it, they might get there, because once you start throwing all those words in there, the marketing person will say, oh, yeah, we can sell that. Barbecue,
right?
Chicken, pizza. Those are all things people like. Yes. So the marketing person's going to score you high. The person who might kind of be the culinary expert is not going to be impressed with what you're sharing there. So it's a contender. We need to know the judges better to know where it stands.
Yeah, I think it's my most straightforward submission.
You, flavor number 4.
Next, I have a flavor that screams America, was a little bit difficult to put into a regional specialty. And like I did before with my toasted sourdough roast beef, I attributed it to two separate regionalities, which could be a problem. If you remember, with toasted sourdough roast beef, I did San Francisco sourdough and Colorado beef. I'd have to pick one or the other. This flavor is baked beans and hot dogs, an American classic. They go together well. They lend themselves to a chip. They're picnic flavors. Here we go with the copy. It's just not a picnic without baked beans, and picnickers across America hail Boston for introducing us to its classic sweet and tender baked beans. But you know what makes great baked beans even better? How about some sliced and snappy New York hot dog? Two great cities, two great flavors, even greater together in a potato chip.
Yes. I think this is a really strong one. I'm not going to say I'll be surprised if hot dogs don't make to a finalist, but when you're talking flavors of America and kind of new and exciting chip flavors, hot dogs kept popping into my head, and I had a hard time coming up with something different or unique. One of my kind of lower ranked ones, I won't go into too much detail, was corn dogs and mustard, but I think the beans kind of really nail it, because that's an interesting flavor. A hot dog and bean in a potato chip. So I think this is potentially your strongest candidate.
Wow, I didn't think so, but I'm glad to hear you say that. I have greater faith in it now.
Rod, flavor number 4.
My next submission is a flavor I'm a little torn on, because I do think it is definitely a regional taste of America specialty, and I think it's unique and interesting. At the same time, I don't like it, so I'm a little bit torn on endorsing it. But here we go. It's jalapeno cheddar cornbread. This is a cornbread recipe that's popular, again, where I'm from in Texas, and I think in the American Southwest. You've got cornbread with basically jalapeno peppers and cheddar cheese baked into it. So I'm not a huge fan of spicy jalapeno type flavors. Cornbread and cheddar cheese, I think I enjoy quite a bit. I think all three of them go well together. And it seems like every year one of the finalists has a little bit of a spice to it, or a bite. I think that's a popular thing with the judges, apparently. So I thought, even though I don't like jalapenos, this would be a strong entrant.
I've noticed you've leaned heavily on your Texas roots, which I think is smart. There's a lot of strong flavors that come out of Texas. Texas is an American state, and might be a stupid statement, but it is a broad American state.
It's a whole other country.
That when you're talking about taste of America, you can go to a lot of different places, but Texas would certainly be a standout as a place that throws flavors right at you in a big way. I chose Texas as one of mine, and I'm not from there. So this specialty, yes, I think you made a very good strategic move by throwing some spice into one of yours, because you're right. They do always want to fill that gap with a spicy one. So, you've gone back to corn in a potato chip again, which is a little bit odd, but it's not the predominant flavor. It can almost just be part of the marketing and not even part of the flavor, and you probably get away with it. So you basically got a jalapeno cheddar flavor, which is attractive, which meets the standards of the Taste of America. Yeah, good luck with it. I think it's very, very solid.
Thank you. I was thinking cornbread flavoring, not necessarily a corn chip flavoring, although I don't know if there's a huge difference, but I've never heard of a cornbread flavored chip, but it seems like it would be easy enough to do.
Flavor number 5.
Before I give my last pick to share with everyone tonight, I wanted to share some of the ones that I'm going to submit or might submit, but I won't elaborate on tonight. First, I had thought curry chicken and rice, but the minute I found out this was a Taste of America, I bailed on it. I probably wouldn't even submit it because it's hard to position as an American flavor. Same thing with bangers and mash, which if you don't know are mashed potatoes and sausages. Again, it's an international flavor, not a Taste of America. I also had an American Trio cheddar sub sandwich, kind of like my other sandwich submission, leaning on the Wisconsin cheddar. I had a chicken parmesan and fettuccine with sauce, leaning on a New York Little Italy association, which I think is pretty weak, to be perfectly honest, as far as the Taste of America. I wanted to try to do huevos rancheros, Tex-Mex breakfast, but I'm not sure I could even be convinced that egg flavoring can be sold as anything except eggs themselves. And one of my favorites was clearly not an American flavor, but I've still convinced myself, and I will submit it, and I call it New York City mulligatawny soup. And the only reason it's American is because mulligatawny was the topic of one of the most American shows we have, Seinfeld. And I, of course, couldn't note Seinfeld specifically, but in my marketing copy, I've talked about the New York City set show about nothing and how it made mulligatawny a pop culture mainstay here in America. So I will be submitting it. I don't think it's a winner, but I was pretty proud of it. I'm going to give you an idea I had, and I would love your feedback on it, and I'd love any advice you could give me, because I like the direction it heads, but in the end, I can't seem to cross the finish line. And this flavor is my most extreme choice. It's taking the idea of the cappuccino, which was obviously something that made people go, oh my gosh, that's crazy, and go even further. This is vanilla cherry snowball or vanilla cherry slushy. I went with snowball because it's a Maryland specialty to call basically shaved ice a snowball. So I thought by associating it with Maryland and calling it a snowball, I could really get points on the regional specialty. And it would be cherry vanilla flavored, kind of like in a Kool-Aid type way. And I think it's extreme. I think it's crazy. I think it's different and interesting, but I'm not sure it really is going to get there. I wondered what your instant reaction is to this, and if you had any advice on how to sell this further, or if I should not put my hopes up on this.
No, I think it's very strong. I like that it's essentially a beverage, even though it's frozen. I like that there's fruit flavoring, which is, again, a very unique flavor we haven't seen yet. And I think, yes, you should go with Snowball. It seems like they're putting a lot of emphasis behind the regional kind of aspect. And if you can tell that story in your copy, which I'm sure you can expertly from what I've heard, it'll bring a tear to my eye once I hear it. No, I think it's really strong. I honestly tried to think of a beverage or some sort of unique fruit that could be incorporated, but I kind of struck out, but I think this is now your strongest flavor.
Oh, wow, that's encouraging, because I was having a hard time giving, and you haven't even heard my copy yet, so I hope this even makes your confidence stronger. The vanilla cherry snowball. Maryland has taken everyone's favorite summer treat, shaved ice, and made it their own. The snowball. Of course, you can get any flavor to enjoy under the hot summer sun, but everybody knows that cherry is not only a classic, but the best. Add a dash of vanilla, put it on a chip, and you've got a sweet favorite anytime you want. And it won't melt if you leave it sitting, although these chips won't sit for long. Plus, they turn your tongue bright red.
All right, my piece of advice on the copy is to end on the on the melting, but they won't sit around for long.
Oh, okay, all right.
That's gold.
Okay.
That's gold.
I'm gonna put it earlier than I think one feature of these could be, maybe not, but they would actually turn your tongue bright red. What do you think? Is that a positive or a negative?
It might be confusing. I mean, I didn't know if it was just like a joke. Like, obviously, it's not going to turn your tongue red.
Oh no, I was hoping that they would. I was imagining
would.
This would be part of the gimmick. It's a gimmick. It's a pure gimmick. It's not an actual potato chip flavor.
Here's the thing. I think it's a great idea, and I think it would be awesome. But I think if you're trying to win the contest, it's going to be a negative because it brings in a whole other aspect of, can we do that? They got to go talk to somebody. Can it be pulled off? It's going to concern people. The kids are going to come home with red tongues.
I'll make a confession right here. In my mind, I'm not counting on just winning this. I'm counting on Fritos Lay hiring me full time, moving me into whatever town their main headquarters is, and I'm becoming their marketing and flavoring vice president after this. That's where my mind's at with this.
Rod, flavor number 5.
Before I reveal my final flavor, I'm going to read off some honorable mentions that, similar to Hugh, I might end up submitting these, or at least some of them. They didn't quite make the cut for various reasons, but the first one is definitely a gimmick, and Hugh had an egg-based flavor that he said eggs might not translate, but I had the idea of deviled eggs in a potato chip. Polarizing flavor, might not work out.
Well, I love a deviled egg, but only as an egg. Anything that tastes or smells like an egg that's not an egg is a problem.
The next runner-up is way more straightforward, but perhaps too much so. It's French toast and maple. I think it's solid, pretty straightforward. I think Vermont would be an easy place to have this be from, but maybe a little too straightforward. Corn dogs and ketchup I mentioned earlier. I think it's Americana. Black olive and garlic tapenade.
Yikes.
A little too foodie, perhaps. I love black olives, so I had to work in black olives somewhere. Similar, but a little less out there. Mustard aioli. I think it's kind of the latest sauce that goes on a lot of sandwiches or even dipping in French fries that everybody just loves. So my fear is that it's a little too hip and too popular right now, and a lot of people will submit it. I tried to think of something to put it on, and I didn't come up with anything groundbreaking, so maybe I'll keep brainstorming on that one.
Partner it with your corn dog. You've got the fancy schmancy and the down-to-earth.
Yeah, maybe you're onto something there. Corn dog, mustard, aioli. Could work out. I like it. So those were kind of my runner-ups. I'll probably keep working on them and submit them in some form. My final actual submission that I'll explain and go into a little bit of detail is definitely in the gimmick category. And it's one of these where I think at first people are going to kind of scrunch their nose up and say, I don't know. But I think it could work. And that flavor is tuna tartare. Hugh is not feeling it. I'm not surprised. Are you a fan of tuna tartare in real life? Have you had it?
I've had it. I liked it. And the good thing about tuna tartare is that, and it's such a weird thing people say about fish, but I buy it. It's not too fishy, especially at the tartare stage. So, yes.
You've hit on the key point. The tartare takes the fishy taste out of it. There's other kind of herbs. I don't know. I'd have to do more research into what exactly is in a traditional tuna tartare or if there are variations. But you get a subtle tuna flavor, but it's a nice flavor. And then I believe there's vinegar and olive oil and perhaps tomato and even onion in some of it. So it's a complex flavor that's just kind of based in tuna. I don't think it tastes a lot like tuna. I think it tastes like tuna, but with a lot of other complex flavors going on. So I'm kind of banking on it being a shock flavor, but the taste is going to be complex and yummy. Hungry Dads! Visit our website at hungrydads.com. Follow us on Twitter at hungry_dads. This has been a Hungry Dads production. Do I have a booger?
Your camera was up.
Camera rotated.
And I just was seeing your head disappear into the I didn't want to stop you in the worst way, but it was just like slowly going and you were disappearing.